Hey, welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I'm really excited to bring not one, but two guests to the show today. It is a rarity. Welcome, Dino and Simon.
Yay. Great to be here.
Hello.
So it's actually really rare that we get two people, two for the price of one, on the show. I'm really excited about it. And obviously, for those of you who don't know Dino or Simon, one, where have you been? Hiding under a rock somewhere, not reading Simon's new book, clearly. But Dino I met in a group with Dan Meredith. So we are both ostensibly members of Espresso with Dan, which is very exciting. Lots of swearing, lots of memes. And Simon is his business partner. And together they have set up this awesome company that really helps entrepreneurs. I'm going to say start to scale, because I think that that's the easiest way for me to describe it, as start to scale in a practical way that actually works, as opposed to building businesses without foundations. So do you guys want to introduce yourselves and let us know the formal down low of what you actually do?
Thank you very much. I am a 50-something entrepreneur, many times entrepreneur now. Built, scaled, shut down, advised, troubleshooted all manner of companies. Last count, it was 224. It's across 22 countries, 5 continents, over 30 years. Obviously, I was asleep all of that time, so I know nothing.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We weren't expecting any actual information.
Nah, it's all right. I'm just going to wing it. But for me, very much, it was a kind of journey of discovery, Jess. I learned a lot about myself in helping other companies and what was wrong with my own company and what was right about it, looking at other firms. I also learned, and probably a really good message, I guess, for anybody, I learned about the difference between competition and collaboration.
Yes.
I am a natural collaborator. I am competitive, but I look for ways to work with other firms if I can. And actually, one of my most successful ventures, which was a tech business, we built our business on the back of collaborating with 3 out of our 10 competitors. Did all of that, went to the competition and said, "You're crap at this. We're really good at it." And 7 of them pretty much said, go take a hike. And 3 said, "Oh, that's really interesting. Let's explore it." And we built a business on the back of essentially subcontracting. And it worked really well. So I am a big fan of looking for ways to collaborate, even when it looks like you are in competition.
I love that. And Simon, what are you bringing to this party? Because it's actually quite a lot. I mean...
Well, my background rather unusually is sports psychology.
Which I'm very jealous of, by the way, because I just have to put this out there. I know that there are going to be people who listen to this and go, "Really, Jess?" But that means you got to work with a lot of, I'm assuming, very attractive men for like the majority of your career. Now, you may not have thought that, but I'm very jealous of this because that's not how I started my career.
I can tell you that many of them were rugby players, so I'm not sure that qualifies as attractive. I did work in football for a bit, and there are a few poster boys in there. But over the years, many. But actually, quite a lot of female athletes as well. Through the Olympic programs, disabled as well, Olympic, Paralympic, so a huge range. And actually, Dino and I first hooked up when I was working with a rugby club in Newcastle, northeast of England. Did you ever watch rugby?
Yes. Well, I actually have, and this is really embarrassing to admit, but I actually have 2 cousins who play for the Army rugby team.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
Very
so
good.
every year we do the whole, "Yay, go Army," against the Navy.
Yeah.
At Twickenham, and it's very exciting. They're both very good, but we don't tell them that publicly because,
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of very good players in that team. One of them was a guy called Johnny Wilkinson, who did make lots of posters.
He did indeed.
Huge female following as well.
I have a particular poddy, that's what we call our podcast listeners on Smart Leaders Sell, who will love this. Emma Langton is one of our big rugby fans, so she'll be very excited that you actually met Johnny Wilkinson. That's very exciting.
Yeah. And he was a really top guy to work with as well. So I spent a good year or so there. So yeah, sports psychology is my background. I have been in business for myself in all earnest, probably from sort of 2004 onwards, when I came out of working in Premier League football for the first time. Yeah, so the thing I bring to the party, as it were, is an understanding of how our mental game works, and more recently, how we develop our character. It's fundamental to success.
It's a really interesting point, because one of the things that I'm always teaching my clients who are on their kind of 25k plus roadmap is about hiring a team. And one of the things that people tend to do is hire based on skill set. And I'm always saying to people, hire based on attitude. you'll get a lot further on, because you can teach skills that can't be, that people don't have, but you can't teach somebody to have a great customer service attitude. You can't teach somebody to genuinely care about your business. You can't teach somebody to be resilient or determined or tenacious. Those are things that actually are shaped throughout your life. And if you don't naturally have that character, then it's just not going to happen for you.
Completely. And actually, lots of the work I do with my corporate clients now is around how to assess character in your recruitment process. So that kicks off this autumn as well. And that's literally a tool on an iPad that helps people understand how much courage and composure and commitment and tenacity this candidate has.
I really like that. And I think it's really relevant to the conversation that we're having today around the six-figure success journey. So let's just tie that in there, because I think that's quite important. Dino's mentioned certain characteristics around competition versus collaboration and whether you're more aligned to one or the other. You've talked about things like courage. Do you guys think that those elements of your characters have helped you get to the six-figure mark quicker? Or, because a lot of people out there, they really put the six-figure goal as the pinnacle. And then what happens is they don't reach it. They beat themselves up because they're like, well, I must be failing. But generally, I think it comes down to basic strategy, but it's more complex in terms of the attitude that you've got towards the goal.
There's a couple of bits to this as I see it. The first is the development of character. And Simon wrote a great little book. It's a read on a flight, basically, which is how to develop character, literally that. First of all, the awareness, understanding that you can do that in a focused way is really important. Then the application of that is kind of key. And I, like most entrepreneurs, I guess, just stumbled my way through challenges and grew by default. And the ability to actually focus that growth and have it come in a way that tackles the challenges that are ahead of you, I think is really important. The other thing is understanding. People talk about this in a very woo-woo way. Trust the process. The universe will deliver. And I'm not going to point fingers at that, but I'm a pretty practical and pragmatic man. And I hold to that old adage that God helps those who help themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you put it out there, maybe the universe does conspire to help you, but you've got to put it out there. So trusting the process is fine, but knowing you've got a process you can trust is really important. And if you do have a process that you can trust because it's established and you can see that it's working, then the outcome will be the best it can if you work that process as well as you can. And on that basis, that's certainly been my experience.
If you look at the entrepreneurial journey, and it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about 0 to 100K or 100 to 250 or whatever, at every stage you are going to get challenged. You are going to have things that don't work first time perfectly, and therefore you're going to need some resilience. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to need some resilience to get back up again, and particularly to sort of get back up with the same level of enthusiasm. And so, when you look at how all the stuff that you need all the way through that journey and the characteristics that you need, you're going to need to just keep going, because it'll get tough. You're going to need to get back up when you fall over. You're going to you're going to experience times when you feel under pressure and you think, I have to make this work. And there are temptations to force things or throw the game plan out the window because you don't think the game plan's working. Try something else. And in doing so, you might abandon the very thing that was about to work. So you also need levels of composure. So if you think about it, there's always going to be an element of risk. There are always going to be unknowns. And with that in mind, you have to have characteristics that will help you push through all of those challenges, learn through them all as well, and come out successful.
And that's a really interesting one, because you mentioned there about sticking to the game plan, even when it doesn't seem like it's working. And this is something that I see a lot in people, because when you're running a launch process, as you guys know, it's one of the most tiring periods of time that you will experience, because naturally you go through the highs and lows of, yay, somebody bought, oh God, it's been 3 days, nobody has, what's going on? Am I really in that big black hole of despair, or is there something else I can do? And the most successful people I see when they launch are the people who recognize that all of these emotions are going to come up, and that they're just going to handle them and recognize that actually sticking to the plan, making sure that they're adapting if they need to, making sure they're changing something if they need to, or just going ahead and following through no matter what. Those are the people that are more successful than the people who kind of go, I didn't sell 100 on day one, so day two's not coming.
The truth is, everybody has the doubts. How we engage with those doubts changes drastically between one person and the next often. For some people, the doubt is the end of the conversation. I don't believe I can do it, therefore I stop. For other people, it's the start of the conversation. So they have a doubt. Doubts usually come in the form of questions. Are you cut out for this? Can you do this? Is this working? And their answer at that point would be, I don't know, but let's give it a try. Will this work? Don't know. I could try. What happens if it doesn't work? I could learn. Then I'll go again. And the doubt, therefore, is the start of a conversation that actually takes them on the journey towards success. But the thing is, the doubt appears for everybody. Steve Redgrave, who was an absolute Olympic legend, said, yeah, I have the doubts too. And they all looked around at him and went, what are you talking about? You have the doubts. You've got 4 or 5 gold medals. He said, no, I have the doubts on the start line. And 10 strokes off the end of the race, when my body and lungs are on fire, I don't know if I've got 10 more strokes in me. So they kind of went, geez, well, if you have them as well, it's okay for me to have them. And actually, if you can have doubts and win the amount of Olympic medals you've won, that's probably okay then. And they all got this understanding that the doubt's normal, but what you do with it at that point differentiates people.
I think it's interesting because Brené Brown has something quite similar around that she says fear can be the passenger, but it can't drive the car. And I think it's a really good analogy, because a lot of people, like you say, they stop the conversation at the point of doubt. It doesn't go any further. And we see it so often with people who are starting businesses. You know, can I do this? Will it really work? Not sure. Okay, well, I'm out of the game. They're out of the ring before they even started. And the reality is that that's a really sad conversation to have with yourself 10 years later, when you go, could I have done it? Yeah. And then suddenly you look back with hindsight and you go, well, I did have a bunch of skills. I actually was qualified. I knew more about the market than I'd anticipated. I probably could have done. And it's realizing and almost harnessing that doubt and that fear as adrenaline and saying, okay, yeah, great. I'm scared at this point. I don't know what is going to happen, because life, no guarantees. But if I don't do it, am I going to regret not doing it more than stepping out and taking a punt?
Absolutely. And I mean, I was talking to my daughter about courage a while ago, and she started to understand that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the ability to go towards your fears. And again, everybody has the fears. It's an unknown. There's a risk. There's a fear. What do you do at that point now? What choice do you make? How do you respond to it? That's the bit that differentiates. Yeah. And, you know, pretty much all successful entrepreneurs that I've met will say, yeah, I know there's a risk, but I'm going to take it, rather than I know there's a risk and I'm not going to take it. And most of them do it in a very calculated way. It's not reckless, but they take it anyway.
I think it's an interesting one about risk, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about this. Like, when trying to get to 6 figures myself, I was naturally really conservative before I started my business. I was the sort of person that had a savings account from when I was about 15 years old. I was that boring child who was like, I have a piggy bank, it's going to stay here, and I'm going to, you know, pay off my pension or whatever with it by the time I'm 22. That never happened. But I was very conservative about risk in my corporate job, because failure was this huge monumental thing that apparently nobody could ever recover from. And so for me, when I started in my business, I was really conservative about risk. I didn't want to invest in tons of things. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. I didn't want to spend a lot of time, because I was so concerned about this, oh my God, what if I fail piece? You know, what are some of the biggest fears do you think that came up for you guys on your journey here?
I think for me, there was a bit of imposter syndrome, first off. It's, oh my God, what if they realize I can't do this when clearly I could? But I just couldn't connect that. Like I was winging it all those years. So there was that. I think that pattern was really a fear of the unknown. What if I step into this situation and I can't handle it? Whatever that is, whether it's a financial, fiscal issue, whether it's a competence issue, whatever. So I think for me, it was all wrapped up in fear of the unknown. So all of the things that happened to me with that issue, and the only way to deal with it, I'll commit to it, and then I'll figure it out, because I won't have a choice. I cannot back out. because the professional in me would always deliver. And I guess that would resonate with a lot of people who would listen. It's like, well, that's fine. The good thing about that, of course, is as you do it iteratively, particularly if you reflect and review, you start to learn that you can do the things, and that the thing that you are afraid of is not really so scary.
So like you, as a kid, I was a save it in my post office savings account kind of guy. But when I went out into the world, and I actually started my sort of first, I'll call it proper business, when I was at university. Unfortunately, I was in my arrogant 20s at the time. And I think it's a bit like the terrible twos for business. And I thought I was invincible. So I probably took too many risks. I probably thought that everything I touched would turn to gold, and it didn't. Then I reached a point where I kind of hit rock bottom, emotionally, financially. And I can remember staring at my last £10 in the world, 2 small children next door, not knowing how the hell I was going to feed them, feeling as guilty as it's possible to feel, and thinking I'd failed as a husband, as a father, as everything, phoning my mum and saying, I failed, I need help, please bank of mum and dad, bail me out, I'm in deep doo-doos. And at that time, I thought, if you went bankrupt or ran out of money, it's like there's no oxygen left and you just die. The sun doesn't rise tomorrow, there is no tomorrow, everything stops, that's death. And then the sun rose the next day, and there was still air around me and I could still breathe. And I thought, actually life goes on. And what happened? Well, you ran out of cash. It might be, it is enough to kill a business, but it's not enough to kill a person. So maybe it's not that scary afterwards. And my perception of that really changed at that point. And although I don't want to go back there again because it was rough, I certainly don't fear it in the same way that I did.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because I was reading a post on Facebook. A lot of my friends have children. I don't, because children don't really like me and I don't really get on that well with them. But she put this post on Facebook about her little boy, and they'd gone to one of these theme parks and he didn't want to get on any roller coasters because he was scared of what would happen. And so they'd be queuing up repetitively, and they'd get to the front of the queue and he'd be like, yeah, no, actually I'm good, thanks, I'm not getting on. And they'd have to go back. And anyone who's ever been to a theme park will know just how irritating this is. And she said, and then it got to about 2:00 and we'd tried all the things, we'd been really frustrated with him. We kind of yelled at him because we'd spent a ton of money on going to a theme park that he now didn't want to do anything in. And, we'd had the tears and all that kind of thing. And she said, we went on this ride and we just kind of explained at the front of the queue, yeah, you're going to feel like this. You are going to feel rubbish. You're going to feel scared. You're going to, not know what's going to happen when you get on the ride. But once you get on, that's going to be replaced with something else. And he got on, and sure enough, he had a great time. And then they had to go and re-queue up for every single other ride that he missed, so that he could enjoy it. But it is that fear of the unknown. People, I call it anticipatory fear. If you don't know what is going to happen, the anticipation of what's going to happen is worse than the thing that actually inevitably happens or doesn't. And I think it's one of those things for business owners. Everyone gets so caught up in, oh my God, what if I don't make 6 figures? What if my business fails? What if, someone leaves me a bad review or something like that? And the reality is that until it actually happens, you have no idea how it's going to feel. So maybe spend a little less time worrying about something you really can't control, and look at the controllable factors that you do have around. Well, if it's that I'm worried about not making 6 figures, how can I go out and do that? If I'm worried about getting a negative client review, how can I make sure that my clients have a great experience and protect both myself and the client moving forward, and looking at the kind of practical aspects.
And if you kind of dig down, I think fear of failure is a biggie for people. So I draw a distinction between failure and failing.
Yes.
Failing is it not working out. Failure is the label that you attach to yourself at that point. It's self-judgment, and we end up sort of building it into our identity. If we've kind of almost made this subconscious deal with ourselves that if I fail at this thing, I become a failure, then we don't want to go anywhere near that.
Yeah.
But if we recognize failing for what it is, I tried it, it didn't work, I could learn something, try it, and it might not work again, but I'm just going to keep doing that, then it takes on, an entirely different perspective to us.
Yeah.
I agree as you do that actually all fear is fear of our imagination. It's our imagination that populates the future, because that's the only way we can experience the future. I asked myself the question, is all fear fear of our imagination? Is there any fear that isn't? That was about 2 years ago. It's still a theory, but I haven't found anything that isn't fear of my imagination yet.
So that's a challenge, isn't it? If you are listening and you have something and you're like, I think that's a fear that's not of my imagination, email Simon. Contribute to his next thesis.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we understand fear on that basis, it also means we have not just an element of control, we actually have ultimate control.
Yeah.
Although it might be difficult for us to exert that control.
And I think it's so interesting, because when you do look at this journey, to six figures, people feel like they're not in control. A lot of people kind of go, oh God, yeah, well, I'm hoping it's going to work out. And that's where we see a lot of this kind of like spray and pray marketing or hope marketing, where people are putting things out there and it's not converting. And it's not that it's their fault. It's just that they're not going back to that control piece and owning, what are the bits that I can actually do here? What are the bits that I can change? What are the bits that are ultimately going to make the biggest difference to me and to my business and help me move forward? And I think it's that process of analysis almost that you have to always have and reflect back onto yourself and your business to know where you want to go next.
Sure, yeah. Dino and I talk a lot about conviction, which is a real confidence in the process. And real confidence isn't hope.
Yeah.
The ultimate expression of confidence is I know this is going to work. And you have to build up evidence to give you that confidence. And to start with, you have to try stuff. Try, experiment. Some things will work, some things don't. Learn your way through it. Gradually, you'll develop more confidence. But it's not all or nothing. You can't, well, I suppose some people do, sit down, sketch out some ideas about how they're going to go and do something, put it into action, and then get really disappointed it doesn't work first time perfectly. Well, if we step back a minute and think, what's the likelihood that if we sit down, scribble a few things on a piece of paper and then put it out into the world, it will work perfectly and deliver above and beyond what we expected? It's kind of irrational to expect that. It's illogical to expect that. If we entered it on a different basis and we said, I'm going to go give some stuff a try. I'll experiment and work my way through it, and I'll keep testing my theories and see what works. I'll let the evidence speak back to me, and gradually it'll just get better and better and better until, it might be a year or 18 months down the line, I actually kind of think, yeah, do you know what? I think I know what I'm doing now. That's when you've got actual conviction in your plan. But you might have to accept that for a while, you're just going to go and experiment with it.
You can talk all day long about the simplicity of business, the simplicity of getting to six figures or even seven figures. But particularly if you're focused on that as your big kind of milestone, you're hitting that six-figure bracket. We talk about the 5 steps to sustainable success, which is aligning your passion with the problem that you solve, attracting the right prospects, converting them into customers and then into raving fans, leveraging resources, people, time, tech, so you get more done, making, and we talked about this, Jess, didn't we? Making and keeping your profits.
Yes.
Really important. Yeah. So you say that really quickly. There's the 5 steps. There it is. That is business success. That is, if you do that, you will be not just successful, but sustainably successful. So what's the gap? All of the insights, the understanding, and the growth that comes through actually making those steps work.
Yeah.
And for me, that's the key. And that's where the fear comes in, and that's where the challenge comes in, and that's where the growth has to come in, but also where the review and the reflection and the learning comes in. All of those things. And all that's hidden in the simplicity of models like that, which work, but you have to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really, key point for anybody that's trying to get the 6 figures.
And I would agree. I mean, I think it's a big misnomer, certainly in online business, that you can just rock up one day with a Facebook profile and expect to make a ton of money. I mean, as much as I loved this particular advert when it came out, 4 years ago when I was setting up my business, and I was like, great, well, within a year, I'm going to be sat on a beach in Bali in my flip-flops, laptop in hand, kind of just doing a couple of bits and making my millions. What kind of shocked me very quickly was that it turns out online business is no different. And it turns out that you still have to work for it. And it turns out that you still have to do the basics. You still have to look at, what am I selling? Who am I selling it to? How am I implementing profit, keeping it, spending it, doing other things? And I think that people just don't they don't pay enough attention, because there is such a big difference between running or building a business and making money online.
Yeah.
Anyone can make money online. Anyone can sell Tupperware to their friends. Anyone can stick stuff on eBay. Anyone can go onto the Amazon marketplace, become a reseller. Not everyone can be or wants to be a business owner. And I think that's the difference. That's what we need to start educating people about, is what do you actually want? Do you want to just make money? Because there are lots of easy ways to do that. Or do you want to build a business? Because actually that is infinitely more challenging.
Absolutely. And you're right, running and growing a business in itself have multiple layers of challenge. I mean, I'm kind of fairly new to any kind of online business. The vast majority of mine's not online at all. And there seems to be a huge focus on attracting customers, whether it's sales or marketing, copy, Facebook ads, whatever it is. Huge focus on that. And I'm thinking, well, in all of business, that's important, but it's only a part of business. Yeah, where's the other bits about understanding your cash flow? And, because if you run out of cash, the business it's like a human being running out of oxygen. That's going to kill it pretty quickly. If that's one of those things you really need in order to survive, where's the understanding about that? Or, having good processes, or, any of that genuinely sort of the stuff that gives business solidity seems to be largely missing in the online space. But if we're talking about business, like you say, not just making a bit of money, but actual business, why would it be any different online than offline? I mean, that's one of the fundamentals of running a business.
And I think that's hugely useful, because again, it is one of the big things in our industry that unfortunately lots of people do get burnt, because they don't build sustainable businesses. They build businesses that can produce once, twice, maybe for 3 launches, or that go into these incredible periods of feast and famine, and actually it doesn't benefit them and it doesn't benefit your business to see such huge fluctuations so regularly. Instead, you want to be creating this kind of average line that you might go above, you might go below, but only slightly. You're only looking at slight increments rather than these huge mountain ranges almost of change, because change is something that you will naturally go through in your business. But if you do it too often, it will destroy it, because you're never solidifying anything for a foundation. Yeah.
And again, I think lots of the messaging in the online world encourages people to go for a huge launch of something. I mean, books are a kind of a classic, and I put a post out a couple of weeks ago saying I'm really genuinely not interested in reaching rank number 1 on Amazon for 25 minutes. Does not interest me in the slightest. I don't care whether I'm number 1 or number 101. But lots of people I know really do care, and they try and get everybody to buy a copy of their book within the same half an hour period so that they top the Amazon charts. I would rather that book still selling to people and reaching new people in 2 years' time. And actually, if I get 10 sales on day 1 and 15 on day 2 and 16 and then 18 and then 20, that's absolutely fine with me. I'd rather that than have 150 people on day 1 and then none.
Yeah.
And just understanding that sort of dynamic. If you're going to be successful in the long term, you need things to grow. It doesn't mean that your launch shouldn't try and attract people, but it's not a one hit. It shouldn't be a one hit anyway. It should be a long-term project.
No, I agree. And I think in that kind of instance, I'm completely opposite. I want my book to be number 1, and it was number 1 on Amazon, because I knew it would help me reach more people. And I think this is the thing that we have to always be thinking about when you're running a business. You've got to look at what stage is my business at and what do I need to leverage now. I was not an author before I published my book. I'd never written a book in my life, unless you count fairy stories when I was about 12. So, they were completely irrelevant, never going on Amazon. But when I launched my book, I knew that the way to make it in terms of selling it sustainably was to hit that top spot, because I knew what Amazon would provide if I did it, and that was additional traffic, and that was stuff that I could leverage, and that was marketing collateral that I couldn't have got anywhere else without paying for it. And it's the same as on this podcast, for example. A few months ago, we did a real push to hit the iTunes top 100. And the reason that we did it was because we were like, okay, what's the organic leverage that we're going to get here? And it, initially 800 new listeners. And we were like, woohoo, that's awesome. 800 new listeners in a month is unheard of without any ad spend. The most important bit to that, though, was how many are we retaining? And solidly, we've retained people, about 80% of people month on month since that challenge. And that's what's been important. So I think absolutely 100% agree. You've got to grow something that's consistent, and you've got to grow something that, is going to grow over time. But I think you've also got to look at, okay, where's my business at? What tools do I have at my advantage to use here? And what's going to make me the most impact right now? Because I know sure as anything that if I went out and I was like, okay, cool, well, if you want to buy my book, go buy it, then my audience would be really happy about that. But it would be doing them a disservice, because ultimately my specialism is sales. If I don't sell, then I'm not teaching people the right things, and I wouldn't have impacted the people I did. Whereas you were already a super successful author. So the difference in that situation is everyone wants to read your book. Nobody wants to read Smartly to Sell. Well, they do.
I suspect you're wrong. I suspect there are lots of people that want to.
Yeah.
But actually, it does link back to, a point that we were both chatting about earlier, which is that a real business takes a longer term view on it. And lots of online operators that I've seen, they bought the thing about how to launch a book. They did the launch, then they forgot about it completely and almost thought it would sell itself just because it happens to be on Amazon, which, as you and I both know, books don't sell themselves. They might get referred, they might appear on Amazon listings and all the rest of it. But unless you're, kind of always working with that product, nothing sells itself.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that a key thing to pick out of that is, as the non-author here, is the launch is not in and of itself the end of the process or the journey.
No.
And that's the bit I think an awful lot of people do when they're in launch mode, specifically because that is focus of the business. It isn't that they're launching something that will then continue. The launch is the be all and end all of the project. And I think that's the issue. Just picking up on another thing that you happened to mention there, Jess, which was kind of interesting. You're talking about essentially retaining, which is really important, and building on that. Attrition is a huge issue in getting to, particularly to six figures. And when I talk about attrition, I'm not talking just about attrition of customers, but attrition of things like energy, the amount that you invest that then bleeds out the other end. And there's this revolving door of effort and energy and intellect and all of that stuff, ideas, that just bleeds out and sucks the life out of you if you don't tackle a lot of the things that we're talking about. So I think for the listeners that are focused on the six-figure journey, particularly that, just taking that away, yes, you want to keep and retain customers and develop and nurture that, but you want to be doing exactly the same thing with things like time and the money that you invest and the energy and all the rest of it.
100%. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. Honestly, it's been an absolute joy. You are ultimately heroes, and it's one of those things. I think it's really nice for everybody to get an opportunity to listen to what actually happens on these journeys and the people behind them, because I think so often we can make that mistake of putting people on a pedestal because they hit a certain financial goal, and we think that there is only one way to make that happen for ourselves. And I think that's the big thing that everyone's taking away from this series, is that actually there isn't. There are lots of ways to skin a cat, and there are going to be commonalities around things that you've brought up today, like character, like building something that's solid and sustainable in the first place, and ultimately actually going through with it and making it happen. So where can people find you if they are looking for the combined magic? Where can they find you?
So there are a couple of things. There's our website, which is www.successengineers.co.uk. There are a variety of events that we hold through the year where we rock up in person.
Awesome. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, you want more of Dino, more of Simon, then please make sure that you head into the show notes and grab those links for their website and for you as well. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any others. And if you've really liked it, then leave us a little review and let us know how we did on the finicky beast that is iTunes. Have an awesome weekend. I will see you on Monday with the next episode.